Hi everyone, today's episode, I'm really excited about today's guest because I'm a lover of her jewelry. It's funny, I actually fell in love with it before I moved to Austin and then stumbled upon her in-person shop, which I didn't even know existed when I was walking around my neighborhood. So I'm like gushing and I'm wearing literally all of her jewelry today. But her name is Amanda Eddy. She's the owner and founder of Amanda Eddy Jewelry, which is an Austin-based jewelry line that specializes in dainty and delicate everyday pieces, which for me is perfect. Because for those who don't know, I'm pretty petite, so the dainty jewelry is perfect. But when she's not designing amazing and new items and running her business and being the face of her brand, Amanda's spending time with her husband David and 4-year-old son Sam. She also serves as a director for the Women's Jewelry Association, helping new chapters across the country launch and grow, which I'm so grateful that you do that, because just like my audience, we're like craving to know what does it take to actually run a business and have a successful business, let alone like not just an online business, which is so easy, well, relatively speaking, quote unquote, easy to do, but actually have a brick and mortar business. It's hard. So thank you so much for coming on. Also, thank you for doing what you do, because I love the jewelry. But yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
We got to know each other a little bit a couple of weeks ago when we first connected, but can you give a little bit of background on your story? Because you weren't in jewelry when you started, right? I think you were in tech. Like, how did you
Yes.
how did you get into jewelry from tech? That's a big jump. It has nothing to do with jewelry.
It's not a very natural progression. No. Okay. So I was working in the tech industry and I was in marketing. So I was a marketing director for a software company in Austin, and I actually really liked it. It was really fun. It was just like a ton of travel, a ton of like screen time. I've always been like somewhat artistic. My mom paints and photographs and is like really amazing artist. So I think that kind of rubbed off on me somehow. And through all of the tech and meetings, I was like, oh, I've got to do something creative. Like, I have to step back and do something like not in front of a computer. So I took a bangle making class at a place in Austin years ago. It was called Creative Side Academy. It's not here anymore, but it was a very wonderful school that's taught so many Austin jewelers. And that's kind of where I got my like love for like playing with metal and like creating jewelry to wear. So I was like, oh wow, that was really fun. Like, I'm going to do that again. So then I took like a ring making class, and they were like an hour long, and you go to take home the piece you made. I still have my bangle. So yeah, it snowballed. I was like, I need to figure out how I can do this forever, because it's so fun. It was creative. And I was kind of looking to make something for myself, because this is, oh my gosh, let me age myself here. This is like 15 years ago, or like 15 years ago. There just wasn't dainty, everyday jewelry that wasn't like solid gold or like brass that was going to like turn your skin green. You know, there wasn't like that bridge to connect them. And that's kind of where I wanted to be. I was like, I want to make something that I can wear, but isn't going to break the bank. So that's where I started. And I started ordering pieces online and watching videos and like tinkering around, and like finally like made some pieces, photographed them on my neck. And I put my first piece up on a website that I made. It just kind of like, it's crazy. It's just nuts how everything has like come full circle now. So those were my very humble beginnings, and it's been a wild decade and a half almost since that bagel class.
And you like survived the pandemic too, which is a big feat, because I mean between like the stock market crash, like I mean we've had a lot of issues, let's say economically, or just like catastrophic things that happen in the country. So the fact that you're still in business also goes to show like you have something of great value and need for women who are looking for everyday pieces like I am. A lot of people, they're wanting to start their own, their own businesses, or they're in that kind of incubation period of like dabbling and trying things out. What was the timeline like roughly of like when you first started taking those jewelry classes, when you were like, no, I'm actually going to do this, and like maybe came up with the name and like started to like create the website? Like what was that sort of like time-wise?
So I put my first piece of jewelry up in 2009 online. And honestly, I was like, oh, maybe somebody will buy something. You know what I mean? It wasn't really like, oh, I want to do this like full time right away, right? I was like, let's just see if this has legs. And it was 8 years ago that I quit my full-time job. So I did it on the side for a very long time. Every minute I had, I'd like go to work in the morning, come home and be like, hi husband, and then like go and like, like make something, photograph it, write copy, work on my website. Like, it was just like this just grind. Every morning I'd get up at 5, and every night like I would work like as long as I could, like stay awake, because I was so passionate about it. As I started making new pieces and got better at like taking photos, and like people were buying them and telling their friends, like it got to a point just one year where I actually like couldn't fulfill all the orders I had in time to deliver them for Christmas. And it was still, I was doing it on the side, right? So I had to like go and like visit, like literally turn my website off because I couldn't handle like all the orders that were coming in. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to do that again. Like this is it. Like this is the moment I have to make the decision. Am I going in full time, or am I like just going to say like, hey, this has been fun, but I can't handle it. You know what I mean? So I was just like, okay, I'm quitting my job. Like, and that was like the moment. I feel like everybody has these like moments where they're like, no, this is it. Like I can actually do it, you know? And that was it. And I, with help from friends and family, like I got all my orders out, like made it work. And then I transitioned into like full-time doing this, but it was a very long process of like slowly building it up. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that can be really beautiful too. You know, it wasn't like I immediately had like all these followers and all these fans. It was like my mom, like, I love that, Amanda. Like on every Instagram post with my mom or person. But like, you know, it's just being able to like kind of trial and error with your first fans, like your family and friends, and then like grow from there. So just hitting that moment was like just this big milestone of where I was like, nope, this is it. I can do this. And then that's where I totally pivoted and went all in on the business. So
thankfully you had like the validation, especially around Christmas, like what a time where you're like, wow, people are choosing me over other vendors to like give their gifts to their loved ones. Like, and also like what a high quality problem of like, I don't have enough time to fulfill the orders. So like what a clear confirmation of like, I'm supposed to be doing this. But like, with that being said too, like, was there, okay, obviously you had the validation, okay, this is working, things are going well, like, I'm excited, I'm passionate about this all this time later. Like, were there any moments where you had doubt of like a slow season or even like COVID or something that had you be like, oh, I don't know if maybe I should have done this, or like maybe I should backtrack or had to pivot, or like, or you've always been doing dainty jewelry, right? So the niche is stuck, but you've changed the different types of styles, right?
So I guess it just kind of like grows and evolves like over time. So like when I first started, it was just me, you know, and I was like, okay, this is fun. I don't have like overhead. I didn't have a studio or overhead or like, you know, store or rent, you know, any of that. I just needed to be able to pay myself. And then once I put my full effort into like marketing and like getting out there, I very quickly realized I was going to need another jeweler or like somebody to help me fulfill orders. So then it's like, okay, well then you're taking on the responsibility of another person and paying them, being there, you know, like how they pay for rent and stuff.
Literally their livelihood. It's terrifying. It's terrifying.
It's terrifying. And then you grow a little bit more and it's like, oh wow, now I'm offering like health insurance. And then it just like comes to this point where even if something is like hard or crazy, like you have to figure out how to make it work, because it's not just you anymore. When COVID hit, we all just were like, oh, okay, so we have to close the store. Okay. And then it was like, everybody started buying stuff online. I started in e-commerce in 2009, so my online has always been like the backbone of the company, right? So closing the store wasn't as like terrible for me as it would be for like a restaurant, right? Until they started doing curbside. But the hard part was, okay, how are we going to pivot and figure out how to fulfill orders and ship them out when we can't be in the same room together? So we would all take turns like driving to the studio at different times and like picking things up and then going to our home studios, making and shipping from home. I mean, the team that, a lot of them are still with me, but the team that did that, they are like my ride or die. The amount of work and effort they put in to keep things going was incredible. And the elevated amount of orders that we had during that time was like, it was like Christmas as far as like orders coming in. It was so busy because people were at home, and I really think that they were wanting to send something to somebody to make them feel good, or just say, hey, I'm still around. And like some of the messages we were handwriting on cards. So it was like this really crazy, scary point for the business, but also like just showed me how nimble we could be, and like no matter what like got thrown at us, we could make it work. And then everything kind of slowly started opening back up. And like, I got all these like, you know, clear dividers, and like we offered curbside. I was like, I don't know if anybody's doing a curbside jewelry, but so many people curbside jewelry. Like,
oh, really?
Yes.
Oh my God, that's so surprising.
It was so, and they would like drive up and like roll the window down and like point to the back seat with the mask on, and we'd come out there with gloves and a mask and like put it in their back seat. And again, it was like, oh, you know, it's like my mom's birthday. I'm just going to drop this off at her front door. Or like, you know, it's these tiny little things that people, I think, were wanting to like gift or give or just be there for somebody. And, you know, at our price point, we're a fashion jewelry line, I think it was really accessible for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
Yeah, totally crazy, but I feel like we did that. We can do it all. We can do anything. So,
With you saying that COVID was not as like terrible as like, compared to other businesses and how their models were set up. Have you had a point in business where it was like a really, really challenging moment? You're like, this was actually the worst thing ever and I don't know if I'm going to make it.
Yes. I don't know if you know, but we had a fire in our building.
Oh, was that last year or 2 years ago?
It was
Oh my
2
God,
years
Parish
ago.
went on fire or something? I remember seeing this. I was taking singing lessons around the block at Eastside.
Oh,
And I remember they canceled my lessons and I was like, did Amanda Deere go on fire? Did Parish?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on? I didn't realize it affected you guys too.
Yeah, it was crazy. So like one day, we left the store and locked up. The next morning I was driving my son to school and I get this call. I mean, it was early, right? And I was like, oh, why is my property management calling me at like 7 a.m.? And I was like, hello?
This can't be good.
And she's like, oh, okay. The building caught on fire last night? Cool, okay. And I like very calmly like walked my son into school, like, see you later. And then I got in my car and I was like, just drove down here. Because nobody really knew anything yet. And like, so they had a kitchen fire. And the unfortunate part is inside of the building are all these hallways, and the kitchen hall was right across from our back door where our employees walk in. So the fire didn't breach our door, but all of the water and smoke and everything when they came and put the fire out flowed into the store.
Oh,
so,
dang.
Oh my gosh, it was devastating. Like, I mean, to this day, if I open a box that was completely sealed, that's like in the back somewhere or something, there's still like ash, like that has penetrated. Like there was ash on everything. There's like mucky water. All the floor had to be ripped up. All the displays, like it was crazy. But I like immediately was like, okay, I don't know how long it's going to be till I can get back in my store. So I talked to my property management. I was like, I need a temporary space. I have appointments. I have permanent braces coming in. I have people. It's like we've got to have a space. So they put me in the building next door. Thank goodness. Like they had something I could go into. It was tiny. I mean, it was like a little closet space. But so me and my entire team, we took all of our jewelry, all of our materials. None of our jewelry or gold or any of our materials were ruined. So that was really good. And we took it all into this teeny tiny space. And we set up a little itty bitty shop. It was like 2 tables and then a permanent bracelet stand. And we made it work. And we were there for 30 days exactly. And in 30 days, we got them to replace the floor. It was the craziest 30 days of my entire life ever. Like even having a kid, like everything. It was insane. And
oh yeah, so Sam would have been like 2-ish, right?
Yeah.
Which is like a 2-year-old.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God, terrible twos is very real. So like,
yeah, it was totally nuts. Like, and then we had a goal of opening Black Friday morning, and we did. The movers showed up at 8 a.m. and the store opened at 11 then, and we opened at 11, and we were still like
oh my
cleaning
God.
stuff off. And I'll take a minute to say, like, if you do have a small business and you have to have small business insurance, it's like one of those things that you're just like, oh, insurance, but like, because we didn't just have like liability, because you have to have liability when you're like renting like from your property management. We also have loss of goods, like damage of goods. We had like, if payroll couldn't be met, like we had all these things in place that I've been paying for years and never used, but like the one time you need it.
Yeah, my dad says the same exact thing.
So
they had
crazy.
Like pipes burst, like they froze overnight, and then they burst, and they had to get every single pipe replaced in their whole entire building.
Yes.
And it was the same thing of like, he's like, if I didn't have the insurance, like,
yeah,
Mama would have been selling her car because we don't know what to do. Like, yeah.
And I mean, even though we have that, it wasn't like, oh, here's all your money. You have to like document, you have to send in all this stuff. And we still had to like make it work and like make payroll before like checking. And I can't say enough about like our community, our fans, even just like some of our vendors. Like we use ShipStation. They like help us with like our shipping. It's like, they're actually based in Austin.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
keeping it all local.
I know. So they can connect to the back end of our website, and we use them to like ship stuff out. And they're a huge like worldwide company, and they posted on their like social media that we had this fire, and like we had all of these orders coming in from this other completely different industry, like because it was the holidays, like people buying stuff like in the ShipStation community and in just like other jewelers in Austin were like tagging me, and like even though we compete, like we're still friends, and they were like, oh my gosh, a jeweler in the Austin community store caught on fire, and then our customers, I mean, just like the amount of outpour and like just help people were doing was just crazy. But yeah, that's the hardest thing. But we made it work, and we got through it, and there are cameras on the store now 24/7. We don't burn candles in the store anymore.
I don't learn your lesson with fire.
Oh my God. Oh, girl. Oh, no. Like, I know it's psycho, but like, yeah, no. We have a wax burner, and it just like, you can get the aroma. It's great. No open flame. So.
No,
oh
like,
my gosh.
I mean, it's pretty cool that you said that all these people kind of came to your like aid when the time of need came, which is like such a, I think there's this quote, like this feeling that in business you're doing things alone. And in the beginning, it totally feel like that, but you've been doing this for so long, and like there's a benefit about like doing something for such a long amount of time and like really putting TLC into it and building those relationships and stuff, because you can't rush something that you want sustainable. And that also goes for your relationship and your community. So like, I don't know. It just goes to show that you've obviously put some TLC into this, and people are like, oh, I actually like Amanda as a person too. It's not just her jewelry. Like, she's like a friend to me. Now, the insurance thing and stuff like that, like, was that part of the, like, the cost of starting the business? Or, like, I guess maybe it'd be helpful to know, like, what are some of the costs that are required to start a jewelry business? Like, you obviously started online before you got the brick and mortar, which obviously meant you weren't paying for the insurance quite yet. But so that came down the line. But, like, how costly is it to start a jewelry business? Because my mind, I'm thinking, oh, gold is expensive, and to make the the kit, whatever it is, like, it's a lot. But
so I mean, like, it really is like all over the map, right? So like it just depends on what you're wanting to do. So if you're wanting to launch like a fine jewelry line with like solid gold and like precious gemstones, then your cost of materials is going to be higher. But then your prices are also going to be higher. And then a lot of times when you're launching, it's just you and like somebody helping you out, or like you've got contractors. That's how I started making things. Like, I didn't just hire an employee right away. I had several contractors who made jewelry for me, like at their own home studios. You can start like really inexpensively. Like, just, you don't have to have like 500 pieces to like launch a collection. Like you can start with a collection of like 5 or 10 pieces, make 5 to 10 of them each, and then see how it goes, and then just like slowly grow. And that's kind of how I've been able to organically grow over the years.
Keep it sustainable. Like, it can get expensive.
Throwing a ton of marketing money at anything. Like, there's no marketing money. Like, there's a little bit, but we kind of have our top selling pieces that we kind of sell over and over and over again, and then we'll introduce like new things here and there, and then a few of them over the years will also roll into the top selling pieces. So then our top selling pieces kind of like grow, and then we're able to like do things that are fun, that are like kind of trendy but still in our lane, right? So like the pearls with a pop of color, like, I love that, that's so fun, like neon, and like Harry Styles, like, so bringing that in, and then like it's just seasonal and it's great, but we didn't make 1,000 of them, we made 100. It's like scaling it for your size. So when you're starting out, I mean, have a business plan. It doesn't have to be this like crazy PowerPoint deck. It can just be like, what are your goals? Like, what are your financial goals for this year? Like, do you want to hire somebody? How much would you have to pay if they were to work for you hourly? Like, how much would you have to pay if they were going to be on salary? I mean, don't forget about paying taxes.
Yeah. Oh my God. I know. I'm in year 3, so I've like started to get used to it, but I have some friends who are like, I still don't have this down. Like, I still am.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's a different system to get used to completely.
Yeah,
so
it is. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why. Just like, really, every month? Okay. Again, like, yeah. But you don't have to like immediately blow it up. I love the idea of like starting small and organically growing, and like just authentically like bringing people in, and it's worked for me really well. I've seen other people like launch a brand and like blow up, and that's awesome, but like it also has to do with like your own personal life and how much you can put in too. So like, I have a 4-year-old. When I opened the store almost 7 years ago, like we were trying to start a family. If I didn't, have my family and all that, would I be opening more stores in other locations? Maybe, but right now, like, that's not the best thing for me personally. And so it's not something that where I want to take the business, but it's cool that I get to make that decision. You know what I mean?
For sure. What more could you ask for? Like, I know people who have gone down that route of like people telling them, oh, you should expand or do this and do this. And then all of a sudden they're like, they have multiple things that they're doing and they're like, I didn't even sign up for this. Like, this actually isn't even aligned to me. And I'm now stressed out and have anxiety. And like, I lost the passion that I originally had, which is the whole point of me doing this, because I went in this direction, or I grew too fast, or like whatever it was.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Just having the ability to say no sometimes. You know, it's like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do what I'm doing. And like, I know what's right for my business. And if not, I'll find out and pivot and figure it out. But yeah, like that was a talk I was having. I was like, do I want to open more stores? Like, that sounds fun. And like, where would I open stores? And then I was like, oh, but then I would have to like go and like open the store. And then it was like, no. Like, we're good right now. Like,
especially with online business, like you can do what you would achieve by brick and mortar stores online. So like, you know, would it be great to be in different areas? Sure. And have the clout for saying that. But like, you know, at what point do you then take away time with Sam or your husband, David? Like, is it worth it? Like, you know, and the other thing too is like, I've noticed at least you're constantly launching new items and like new collections. And so like, if you were to put your effort into that, like, part of the business, then you lose the creative aspect, I'm sure. Like, it's a sort of like, it's a special, how would I say? Like, I feel like creative energy, when you have it, but when you don't, and you, like, when you've kind of lost all your fuel, like, how do you then build on stuff, right? And especially like, maybe I can get into the next question I was going to ask too, which is like, you know, talking about launching collections and things like that, and like, how do you stand out in your industry? Like, is it just by launching new things consistently on a smaller basis? How do you determine what your unique selling point is? Like, even for you, you knew from the beginning you wanted dainty jewelry, but like, how do you still be relevant, especially with so much competition?
Oh man, I wish I could like answer that like immediately, because it's like, that's
I know there's no one like
where,
size fits all, but
it's crazy. You know, it's like, it's such a different world now than when I like first put my first piece of jewelry up. Like in 2009, like there was no Shopify or Squarespace or anything. I was like literally cobbling together like a GoDaddy website and like HTML, you know, like it was such a hot mess. Oh my God. But like, that's how you had to do it. And then now it's like, oh wow, like you can just start a website. It's great. It's awesome. Shopify's amazing. You know, all these things that we have now are so great. And so yes, there's like a lot more competition. There's also like a lot of brands that are in my space that have gotten like funding, which is, it's just not a route that I want to personally go towards, you know, but like that's really hard to compete against, like where they're spending marketing dollars. Like we have to be like crafty and, you know, be more, I guess, nimble.
I totally get it. For sure. One of my girlfriends, she has a press on nail company. And it's so interesting because she was one of the first in the space, but she was fully bootstrapped. She wasn't funded. And then all of a sudden some big dog came in who had like investor bucks, and now they're like ripping off some of her designs, and they have better packaging and all this stuff. And she's like, hold up, like I was the one who started this kind of trend, if you will. And she's still leading the pack in a way, but it's just like, what you can do with investor money goes so far, but then you're basically answering to someone else versus yourself. So it's like, are you back to them again, what you were before of like, am I doing this for passion, or are we doing this to make people happy, like investors happy?
And I mean, that's something you have to ask yourself. Like, I am constantly having that conversation. I'm like, oh, do I go that route, or do I just like stay my course? And at the end of the day, like I want to be able to like do what I want to do, and I don't want anybody to tell me what to do. All the challenges that come with it is beautiful, like in a way. You've just got to like figure it out, and like the business is its own like organic thing, and it like grows with you and like shrinks sometimes, and then like you've got to like nurture it back up. And you know, when I opened the store, I focused so much on, oh my gosh, I have to have like a opening part, you know, all this stuff. But for like 6 months, I kind of neglected like my first baby, which was online e-commerce, right? And I could feel it. Like I was like, oh, we need to get back to the website, which is like the backbone of everything. And like, you know, I was like losing my mind. I was like, I'm going to do a line of candles. I'm going to, I was like, just like going in all these different directions, because it was this like new exciting thing where I had like shelf space that people could come in and see. And it's like, when I finally got my head around it, I was like, no, this is our showroom and our studio's in the back. We're going to launch our collections up here. And then I can wholesale candles from other women Austin makers, or, you know, you know, like really nice cards or whatever. I don't need to do it all. I need to focus on like what I'm good at, because I really got pulled in all these different directions. And then like I could feel it, like the bottom line, I could feel it. And then just kind of like centered again. And I was like, okay, here we go. Let's go forward again. Oh, and then COVID.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it is
yeah.
like reassuring to hear that you had ideas, right? Because I could tell you're a creative person, like you've got a lot of passions and stuff, just like outside of the business as well. Like, and of course, naturally you want to bring it in because it's part of who you are as a person, right? Like, so like, have you, I mean, it's again, like I said, reassuring to know you can have an idea and then a little while into it, think like, no, this isn't the right idea. Like this, I thought it was, but it's not, because everyone thinks that way. But
for sure.
Have you ever like scrapped a collection that you were building for that reason too? Of like, oh, I thought this was going to be on brand or maybe something different. Then I realized, no, actually it's not the right niche for me.
Yeah. Like we do that a lot actually. So
Really?
Yeah, I have a manufacturer who it's a woman-owned business, which I love. And we go through a series of samples, right? So it's like, okay, for whatever reason, I wanted to do, I have this like crazy idea. I'm like, okay, I want to do this. And like, it's going to be this awesome like bracelet and like necklace set and all this stuff. And we'll like go through the CAD designs and the sketches and everything. We'll get the samples, the molds made, everything. I get the samples sent to me and I'm like, whoa, oh man. Sometimes until you like physically have it in your hand and see it in person, but you've already gone through all this much work, it's just like, I don't love it. And like, I know we just spent a ton of time and money and resources on this, but it's just, this isn't it. And then we'll scrap it. But we're always like working on like new pieces and new samples. So it's kind of like ever evolving. But there's a lot of stuff that has never seen this light of day.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Actually, yeah.
Oh, do you really? I was going to ask, what do you do with the
Yeah.
stuff that you don't use? Because obviously you're not going to throw it out.
A lot of it we keep like just for reference of like, hey, like if we're ever going to do something like this with this plating or this thickness, like here's this material. But I'm just like, anybody want this ring? Like this, and we like all, and then we're like, oh yeah, like and then what's funny is sometimes somebody will wear something. I'm like, what is that? And they're like, that was like that sample from like a year ago, and you kind of come back around to it. It's bizarre. So. Yeah, it's a process. And, you were saying like trying to be creative sometimes when you personally are just drained. I definitely feel that a lot with a kid.
I was going to say, how is balancing all that? Like, it's a lot, I'm sure.
And like we'll have a busy family weekend and then I come in and I'm just like, oh, okay, like create, be creative. Like, there's nothing. You can't like pull from nothing. So I really have to like take the time to just connect with things that like inspire me and just like get into that place, because
like what do you do to nurture yourself to get that creativity back once you're like flatline? Or do you take like 0 days? Like sometimes I have to do that where I'm like, nothing's happening. I'll do the admin stuff, the bare minimum, and then we'll try again tomorrow. Like I really can't pull. I
don't have like a ton of bandwidth to like just like go to Italy for like a week. But I will sometimes not go to the store studio, which seems weird, but like sometimes there's so much going on, like orders coming in. It's just like it's hard for me to like focus and just sit. So honestly, like I have a day at home where I'm like not focused on like emails or whatever coming in, and I like make lists. And I have this notebook that I like physically write in, and it's just notes and like maths. I don't know. It's just this tattered notebook that like really gives me this like energy and kind
like
of,
your brain dump kind of area.
Yeah, totally. And I've always like used it, and it's like the same leather notebook, and I just like swap the paper out, but I save the paper and I will flip through it. So that's kind of my centering point. So God help me if that notebook ever goes anywhere. Just shut her down. That's it.
I'm the same way. I'm a big journaler, and I like to go back and reference, like, did I have an idea that I didn't capitalize on? Or is there something, some realization, a quote, like, I don't know, something.
Yes.
I also put like a lot of different stickers and random stuff for inspo later. But
I love that.
Yeah. My mom's a scrapbooker, so I come from a creative family as well. So like, you got to sprinkle a little those things in somewhere. But one of the things you mentioned before we started recording was that you're actually attending a GEM conference today, right here locally in Austin.
Yes.
So is that one of those things you would use as like a sort of inspirational sort of thing? Or is it more of like a connection thing? Like what are those sort of conferences and trade shows mostly about? Is it sourcing new manufacturers? Like what is that about? Yeah.
So it's both. So yes, like I went to a couple of sessions this morning and I was like, yes, Exactly. Like, you just get all fired up because everybody's in the room and the speaker's like amazing. I really get a lot from that. Like being in a room full of like other people like in my industry where sometimes you feel like you're just like alone on this island, especially when you're starting out. So
Yeah.
definitely like find, I know it's cheesy, but like find your tribe, like find the people that like you can connect with. Like the Women's Jewelry Association for me is that, right? It's a nationwide organization, but we launched a chapter in Austin like 6 or 7 years ago. And I didn't launch it, but I quickly was like, can I be part of your group? Like, I want to hang out. Like, I want to be, I want to be around other people doing what I'm doing. And like, let's talk. Like, oh my gosh, did you guys survive Valentine's Day? Like, we all are doing the same thing. Like, we don't have to be competitive. We can talk and like share ideas and brain dump. And I immediately was like, okay, this is something that I'm passionate about. This is a way I can like kind of give back to. I was on the board for a year, and then I became president-elect, and then I was president of the Austin chapter for 3 years. And then I transitioned to director level at the national WJA organization. So now I help chapters start in new cities. So super exciting. So just launched Toronto. There's like Portland, DMV. Like it's so fun, and it's like really cool to like have these conversations with like people that were like me, and then getting to go to like the shows. Oh, the Tucson Gem Show, or like JCK in Las Vegas, and like the one that's here in Austin is the American Gem Society, and like it's really cool. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, really cool, like, every girl loves the shiny stones, so like you go and it's just like twinkling lights. Yeah. But
seriously, and I'm going and I'm like, I want to talk to our box vendor, like who does our like gold foil boxes, or so it's kind of like this all-in-one thing, or like. We do custom engraving, so the people that we bought our engraving machine from are there, or like we're looking for a new manufacturer, or just something. So it's kind of like you go and you can there's all of these different people, but then there's also all of the gold and the gemstones and like the different suppliers, and I mean you're just walking down these aisles with just like sparkle like everywhere. It's hard not to be inspired at places like that, and it's hard not to buy everything and then come back and like, look, I don't know what to do with any of this, but I'm going to make something with it.
So for people who are just starting, or like trying to itch a scratch around, let's say gem making specifically, or being a jeweler, other than like taking a course or a class, and maybe attending events where there's a community aspect of it, what would you suggest is like the first few things they should do? And also like maybe in the first 1 or 2 years of business, or I don't know what the threshold is of like, oh, when you've made this amount, or like, I don't know what the metrics are of like you've had success, but like what would you recommend people wait to do? So like in certain cases to hire a photographer or to get a store, like what, just for insight for some people. Do's and don'ts, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that you can do online now. You can create like a very beautiful successful brand online. The store was something that just kind of happened. Like I needed a bigger studio, and the place that I found had a retail door, and I was like, oh, we could cut it in half and have a store. So
your location's perfect too.
Yeah, and
like your clientele is literally right across the street. Like
it worked out, but I wasn't really looking to like open a store. It just kind of happened, and I mean, I'm glad it did because it's been amazing. But definitely don't have to do that. So like when you're just starting out, like keep it simple. Create your collections. Have your monetary goals are always going to change depending on what you sell, the quality of jewelry you're selling, fashion versus fun. But I mean, it's always a good idea to have like 90 days of running. Like 90 days, like do you have enough in your account to where you can survive if something crazy happens, like a pandemic or a fire in your store, like have a little bit of a cushion. And then, I mean, the sky's the limit. Like, you get to determine, this is your thing. Like, you get to determine your own rules. Like, I mean, if you want to make $5,000 this month, go for it. If you want to make $100,000 this month, then, hey, that's awesome. Like, how are you going to make it happen? And especially when you start small and it's just you, or maybe you and one other person, like, you can change direction if you need to. You can, just be like, oh, that didn't work. Let's go this way. But the bigger you get, like it's harder to make those changes because you've got to not just like you do it.
Is there anything that maybe people should be aware of, like not predatory practices, but like, oh, I wish I knew this when I was starting. I wouldn't have gone with this sort of manufacturer, or like been more aware of like the sort of, I don't know, blends of metals, or any sort of insight into things that people should be aware of?
I mean,
I know there's a lot, but just like
Yeah,
right off the top of
there
your
is.
head, like in the
Yeah.
beginning when every dollar is so
For
important.
sure. Yeah. I mean, you really need to know what you're trying to create, right? So, like, if you're wanting to do like beautiful fashion jewelry that's brass based, like, wear it yourself and know the limitations, right? So, like, you can't wear it in water. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you just really get to know the materials you're using and like how they're going to wear for your customers, because you have to be the most educated person in the room when you're selling a product, right? So that's one thing. And then also it can be really hard to find and work with reputable manufacturers. And I wish there was like an awesome website source of like, these are great manufacturers to work with, but it's like trial and error. I've like worked with so many over the years and like gotten things that weren't the material they were supposed to be. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not like this is not correct, or they like try to like plate it in a different finish, or you know what I mean? Like, so just, I guess, knowing what you want, making sure that it's seen through like all the way when you're working with a third party. But if you're making it yourself, then just choosing the right materials, knowing how they're going to wear for your customer long term if you're not using like solid gold, and just educating yourself the best you can on the materials you're using. But also, like, I can't set a stone to save my life, right? That is not my forte. But like, I work with people who can, and so like sometimes if you aren't personally able to do something, then you can bring somebody in that can. Like, maybe you have to bring in a bench jeweler to like create your vision, and that's great. Like, compensate them for like their creativity and time. Like, they're bringing your vision to life. But yeah, like, you don't have to know everything. You just have to know enough to like get started.
I don't obviously know the industry quite like you do, so I, had to ask also because I'm sure there's a ton of people who are like, I would love to get started in that, and I have so many ideas, but like, I don't know if I have the bandwidth or the the cash for it, or like, oh, should I, So I'm always curious what people say, but I love the fact of you like saying, oh, you should get to know your materials, because also like you want to be reputable for exactly what you're saying you're going to be, right? Like Shein, which is like super, super cheap and like crappy, honestly, like they're not known to be good quality, and that's why people keep going back. It's like, okay, I'm getting exactly what I pay for. Like, so same with your quality. I love the quality of your jewelry. That's why I literally have so much of it. Like, so, keep coming back.
So many community colleges, like all over the country, have jewelry schools. Like Austin especially has a jewelry school in its community college. So you can take like night classes, you could take like just 1-2 classes here or there, and I mean, they're so great. Like, you can learn so much, and then within that classroom you're meeting other people who are passionate about what you're doing, so that's a really great place to start as well.
Yeah. I also like the idea you said before about taking the little courses here and there. I have friends who I make those suggestions, like, go dabble a little and see what you like, because you're not going to know until you do it.
Until you do it, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And one person I know did a leather working class, and he's like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. And now he's like going down a rabbit hole that he would have never known because he was in a completely different industry. But I'm glad to know that in Austin they have actual classes so people can take them. I mean, I didn't know that. I would take one, but
it's so cool.
Yeah. Well, this has been really insightful and awesome. I'm so grateful to like have gotten to know you better. I mean, obviously, like, I'm obsessed with your jewelry, so like it's cool to see the person behind and obviously hear the story too, because everyone's like, how did you grow this? What we perceive as a massive thing, but to you is like, how did this like go from a baby to like a teenager, if you will? So, but one of the things that I do with every episode as I wrap it up is just like one final tie up is, if you could give advice to your younger self, what would that be? If you have any send off,
it's okay to leave your full-time job before you think you're ready. I had that pivotal moment that Christmas, but honestly, I think I could have done it like 5 years earlier. And I was scared to lose my high-paying job. Like, I had done that for over a decade. I was scared to lose health insurance. I mean, at that point, my husband and I had bought a house, and I was like, bringing home money to pay rent. And it's just, I was so nervous about so many things, and I wish I would have been like, let's just do that, like I would have been a little more reckless.
Let's just take the leap and see what happens. Yeah.
And and I mean, I'm glad that I waited till I did, but I feel like I could have gone earlier, like done things quicker. But at the same time, it kind of all happened when it's supposed to. So maybe that's not the
Yeah. I mean, no, I get it, right? We all want to like get as much experience in life as we can.
Yeah.
And there's always the trope of like, oh, I if I would have known, I would have done it sooner. But it's just, I like to call it divine timing. That's how I sleep better at night, knowing like, okay, it wasn't that wasn't in my timeline to do it a year earlier. So we're just doing it how we are now. Like, yeah.
That for sure. I guess just in general, like not being afraid to just freaking go for it. Like, do you know what I mean? Just like do it. Let's just do this. I was like so shy about like putting my brand out there at first. Like I posted about
it's so
it like
vulnerable.
to friends and family. Yeah, and like it's funny. Like now I'm like at events with like other moms, and they're like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm a jewelry designer." Like, it's just like explaining it kind of over and over again. You get better at it. It's funny, like looking back. But yeah, it does all happen when it's supposed to. And I'm glad that it did. So.
Well, as a wearer of the jewelry, I'm glad you did too. But yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on it. This was really great. I'm glad to have gotten to know your story and how you like pivoted and jumped around. People are always looking for inspiration to hear from others who have kind of walked the walk that they seek to create for themselves. So yeah, it's been really great. For those listening, you can find Amanda's information, of course, all the links in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I had so much fun.